Okay, perfect. Um, Okay, so treatment then, moving on towards our treatment of people with a disability. We have, and this is where the definition that I was saying to you about reasonable accommodation, we have to do all that is reasonable to accommodate the needs of a person with a disability. And again, what's reasonable, it's a very subjective word. So it involves providing special treatment or facilities in circumstances where without these, it would be impossible or unduly difficult to avail of the goods, services, accommodation, etc. You're not obliged to provide special facilities or treatment when this costs more than what is called a nominal cost. Okay, and again, a nominal cost will depend on the circumstances, like the size of the organization, the resources involved, is there grants available, and all of those types of things. Let's say, for example, a nominal cost for a one-person training provider versus the likes of an ETB would be vastly different because of the resources available to them. So you can't kind of compare training providers with each other. It has to be seen as what's a nominal cost. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moving on, then we have the whole area of harassment or sexual harassment. And I know you probably think, God, as a trainer, will I ever have to deal with this? And hopefully it will never be the case. But again, it falls under one of the discriminatory grounds. Okay. So any case with regards to harassment or sexual harassment falls under the gender category of the Employment Equality or the Equal Status Act. So that's why we have to talk about this when it comes to the equal status. So as a definition, harassment is any form of unwanted conduct related to any of the discriminatory grounds, so any of the 9 grounds. Sexual harassment then is any form of unwanted verbal, non-verbal, or physical conduct of a sexual nature. So they're the 2 definitions. What we need to be mindful of here is the role of a responsible person. So a person who is responsible for the operation of any place that is an educational institution or where goods, facilities, or services are offered to the public, or a person who provides accommodation must make sure that any person who has a right to be there is not harassed or sexually harassed. So, for example, anyone as a training provider, any of the likes of the ETBs, there is a responsible person there, and they are responsible for ensuring that policies and procedures are in place that prohibit harassment and sexual harassment. The responsible person will be liable for the sexual harassment or harassment unless she or he took reasonable practicable steps to prevent it, i.e. if policies and procedures are in place. For example, if all of that and it still happens, it's mitigating the case on the other side of things. However, your role in this in relation to a trainer is, if I see anything happening, you need to elevate it up to who it is you report to. So you need to say, I've noticed this happening, I'm concerned about this. You wouldn't be classed as a responsible person in this situation. It would be, you're the person that you would have notified, or, indeed if they have to notify somebody else as well. But again, it's just something we have to be mindful of inside a training situation, that it has the potential to occur, but touch wood, it doesn't occur all that often. That is something anyone has too much experience with. Okay, so my advice to you would be, if you're ever involved in a situation and harassment or sexual harassment or anything like that comes up, go to your coordinator, go to your superior, go to the person who brought you in to do the training, and tell them and ask them what are the appropriate steps that you should take. Because by doing that, you're informing, you're passing on the message, and ultimately you're not carrying the can for it yourself then either. Okay?
Vicky, I just have a question there. Is there going to be some of this that will come up in our assignments going forward? Are we going to be talking about equality and diversity, or?
There's one piece for your project that you do have to reference for equality just around the training that you're delivering. So was there any equality areas that you had to take into consideration? But it's a very, very short paragraph. There's not a lot of detail, because really around the equality area, I could talk for hours on it. Other people could talk for hours on it. We don't need to be experts in it. We don't need to, we don't need to have employment law knowledge on it. We just need to be mindful of it from a trainer's perspective.
And it needs to be covered, of course. Yeah.
And the other thing, Declan, is, like, let's say, for example, if you're delivering training, someone identified in that group maybe has, a hearing difficulty. Well, you would be saying to that person, make sure you sit up the front, if you want the notes in advance. They're all the reasonable steps, and they're the obvious ones, and they're what we're going to have to be dealing with on a typical daily basis, shall we say. Whereas the sexual harassment, that side of the things, hopefully will never knock on anybody's door.
I did a course there recently, and there was a few people there that had intellectual disabilities, so it was really important to kind of understand that. So it's like, it's a very important topic, but it's not something that we need to cover greatly on our assignments and things like that.
No, absolutely not at all. And again, it's those things. It's to keep in mind as to, okay, you have people with intellectual disabilities, but an awful lot of those have huge capacity. So it's what structures need to be put in place in order for them to access the training. Do they need someone to attend the training with them? I'll give you an example about a situation that maybe I told you this already, I'm not so sure. If I have, just tell me to shut up. Where there was a course that I heard of being run. I know the tutor on it, and it was a cookery course. So there was a person on the course with intellectual disability, and I think it was autism, and they required their carer or their support worker to attend the course with them. And like this, I just found this horrendous. The training provider actually wanted the support worker to pay to attend the course, because their view on it was that person was learning as well, which I took a quite poor view of, because of the fact of that person was there to support the person who wanted to do the course. They weren't there to do the course themselves.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Exactly, yeah.
What would be your own kind of feelings or opinions on that?
Well, like, we'd have had courses and work now, and you don't know whether fellas are being smart or not by saying, I can't hear you, and then they'd always just offer them a seat up the front, and it just boxes it off then.
Like, I would have attended a HACCP course with some of the lads that I used to deliver training to, and they didn't charge me to do it. I got my cert out of it and everything just because I had to accompany them, and there was nothing said. It wasn't an extra additional charge or anything at all,
Yeah,
So
and I would kind of think I took a very poor view of the person who was doing it, because here you have somebody, and we're supposed to be all about equality and giving people opportunities, and I just took a very, very poor view of that
looks
scenario.
greedy, like it's just a greed thing. There's no kind of thinking behind that.
No.
It's totally money driven, like.
Yeah, and I mean, potentially, if that person, let's say if the support worker couldn't pay to do the course, you were going to lose someone who really, really wanted to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all those like positive measures. What can we do in order to make it accessible for people as well? But Declan, I suppose, going back to your original question after I went off on this big long tangent, and we don't have to cover it in any vast amount of detail for the course, or indeed for your assignments or projects or anything like that. Okay.
So you're just saying, Vicky, that you're taking into consideration.
Yeah.
Basically.
And and remember as well, sometimes with classes, you mightn't necessarily know in advance. Like if you take back the first night that I went into YE, I didn't know what kind of a group that I was going to. I didn't know what support somebody might need. So you might only find that out on the day. You might not find it out at all. Like let's say if somebody has literacy issues, people are very good at hiding literacy problems. So you might not find that out either. So it's just to do all we can with what we're told that we have in front of us as well. And you as a trainer picking up with your gut instinct, say that, you know, that person, they look like they can't hear properly. You'll pick up on all those kind of non-verbal cues as well.
And I think the awareness of it is very important as well, just to be aware that this is how it could be.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely, 100%. Okay, so we move on to the Employment Equality Act side of things then. So this was amended by the Equality Act in 2004, and this specifically focuses on aspects related to employment. So your equal status is around access to goods, to services, to accommodation, to training and educational institutes, whereas the Equality Act is purely to do with employment. The aspects of employment that are covered include advertising, equal pay, access to employment, vocational training and work experience, terms and conditions of employment, promotion or regrading, classification of posts, and dismissal or collective agreements. So you can't, again, you have the same 9 grounds of discrimination, and you can't utilize any of those as kind of decision-making criteria for the likes of recruitment, selection, equal pay, training, anything like that. Okay, now again, I could talk for absolute hours on that, but we don't need to know a lot about it. We just need to know that from a perspective of training, that everybody has a right to act and an equal right to access training. Okay?
Yeah.
Any questions on this one? No? Okay.
No.
Where this is going to, there's a piece actually, a written piece about this in chapter 8 as well, of the notes that I've given you. So it's at the end of chapter 8. So again, there's just some more information there on that. Where this is going to come in, as I said, is a little part in your project about if you have to consider any kind of reasonable accommodation for any trainees or anything like that.
Actually, Vicky, with regards to the notes that you gave us, chapter 8 and chapter 9, I couldn't download and print. It just kept saying error. I think other people had the same issue.
Are you all having a problem with chapter 8 and chapter 9?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it said access denied.
Yeah.
And it was the same with the first lot of training as well. There seems to be an issue with when you put stuff up on PDF rather than on PowerPoint, because when you put both up, I can download and print off on the PowerPoint, but I can't access tonight comes up on the PDFs.
And I can't download the PowerPoint, only the PDFs. So it's the other way around.
It's the other way
Okay,
around.
so what I do is I'll make sure that it's going up in the PowerPoint and the PDF for the presentations. I only have the chapters in PDF. So has anyone been able to download them?
I was able to download sorry, it's Mary here. I was able to download it on the PowerPoint only.
Yeah.
So you haven't had any access to the chapters?
Chapter 10, I can't. Chapter 10 was the last one, wasn't it? Yeah, I think chapter 10 I was able to.
Okay. What I might do is I might upload them again, and we'll see what the story is. Because I haven't been having an issue. I might try from another computer, just to see if I have an issue, and I'll see is there any way that I can upload them again or something like that. And I will do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know it just came up on my screen.
Yeah, because actually, Vicky, chapter 10 I was able to download and print off.
Okay, so it's just it's chapter 8 and chapter 9.
You know, the chapter 12 is training evaluation. Is that not the same as the one you've attached that's just called training evaluation? Do you know, it's like presented in a PowerPoint version and then the printed, photocopied version. Are they not the same, or?
So the chapter is kind of just, shall we say, it's gone through in more detail.
Okay, right. But is it like, is everything still covered in the one that's named?
The PowerPoint?
Yeah. Or?
But I suppose just in the chapter, it's just supplementary information, and it might go into things a little bit more detail.
Right.
Okay.
Have any of you tried to download them via Moodle?
Yeah, I did, Vicky. Paul here. Yeah,
Paul.
they downloaded fine from Moodle.
Okay,
No, I haven't tried printing them, but they definitely downloaded.
they downloaded. Okay. So it might be no harm to try. I'll take them down off. I won't take them down off Edmodo. I'll put up a second lot of them on Edmodo. You can try that again. And then in the event that that's not working, I'd say maybe try Moodle just to see is that working better.
Is absolutely everything on Moodle altogether? Like that's the whole.
Yeah,
that's all the notes for
was,
this course.
Yeah, I thought they were scheduled, but they just all popped up there together. So that's if any of you have gone on to Moodle, the notes that are up there are absolutely everything. So there's no other notes that you need. Everything you need is on Moodle already. On Edmodo, they're scheduled to go up, so I had them more spread out for you.
Yeah, I think the Moodle is actually quite handy, Vicky, because you can download the whole lot in one swoop.
Okay. Perfect. And look, I'd be very happy with that feedback as well to see what to utilize. Because it's all there in Moodle as well. You don't have to go trawling through things looking for them. It's right in front of you.
Is there a login or something for Moodle? Sorry.
Yeah, same question.
They should have sent you an email.
Emails from the Cork Training Centre should have emailed you a login and a password for Moodle.
It didn't work. It's Mary here. Mine didn't work, and I tried it in different ways, and it didn't work. The Moodle account.
And I sent an email about your one, Mary, so I'm just waiting to hear back from them. But you would have I got confirmation that everybody got an email with a login and a password.
Okay, I'll look at that.
If you haven't got it, Jackie, let me know, and I can contact the training centre as well, just to say to give it to you.
Okay, perfect. It would have been when we started, so would it?
No, it would have only been, I'd say, last week.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, so it would have only been, I think I got mine last Thursday or something like that, so it would have only been within the last week or so.
Grand. Okay, perfect. I'll check that out. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay.
Sorry, maybe I didn't hear you when you said, are all the files together on the Moodle account then?
I just see now there, do I have my Moodle, or do I have my Moodle open that you can see? I do. So if you were to see there in Moodle, so this is what Moodle will look like. Can you all see that okay?
No.
No, okay, because I know why I have to share the screen with you. I have to share all that. So if I share my desktop with you, if I share this.
Okay.
So that'll be your login can you all see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go in, you'll see training and development. And if you go in, all the information is there as you need it, and they're all in different folders. So your roles and competencies of trainer, preparing for training, delivering training should have been up next, but I put that in wrong. So that's all the notes that you have for the next so that's all the content that's left to cover. So it might be a little bit more straightforward for you than Edmodo, rather than having to trawl back through all the previous posts. Everything is here for you as you need it. So let's say, for example, if you go into preparing for training delivery, you can see the PowerPoint and the chapter is there, or you can just download the entire folder.
Well, perfect.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's just a little bit more, I won't say user friendly, but it's just more information friendly in the sense that it's all there within the one, within the one screen for you, that you don't have to go looking for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Vicky.
So no problem. We'll go back to our content now. So you're all happy in the equality and diversity side of things, that I've taken a note here just to re-upload the files, and then if you just have a look at Moodle, because again, if they're accessible up there and you have the login, and we'll get that sorted as well. It's fairly straightforward, like it is quite, quite easy to navigate your way around. So we're going to move on now and talk about the presentation for preparing for training delivery. And again, I'm going to share that screen with you. So can you all see that okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at doing training, obviously once we've gone through our identify, our design, and we're moving into our delivery, we don't just launch into the delivery. We look at preparing for our delivery as well. So on completion of this tutorial, the learner should be able to devise appropriate strategies to address a range of issues pertinent to trainees. So at this point, we need to be thinking about what are our trainees potentially going to be worried about when it comes to training, and how are we going to deal with those issues. We need to be able to choose and develop relevant learning aids and materials specific for training events, i.e. things like your extra handouts, any props, anything like that you might need. You need to be able to plan and organize an appropriate location for a training event, and identify the benefits of rehearsing your training delivery as well. Okay, so our trainee considerations here, we need to take into account things like the background of the trainee, where it is they're coming from. Again, we may not always know this information, but if we can get it, it's great. So we need to be able to look at the background information, maybe the emotional disposition as well, in the sense that if somebody has gone through, and again, we mightn't always be aware of this, but if somebody has gone through quite a stressful situation, they mightn't be mentally in the space to be involved in learning, in a learning scope at this present moment in time. And we're also looking then at things like your previous experience. Another factor that we need to take into consideration here would be age. So from the perspective of age, why do you think this would be important for you as a trainer to think about what your trainees might be thinking about with regards to their own age? I know we talked about this briefly before.
Young people might be nervous. Maybe they mightn't have been in that kind of environment before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a young person might be eager to learn, whereas someone kind of near retirement age might be just kind of ready to box it off. Like.
Yeah, they might kind of the whole idea of you can't teach an old dog new tricks or something along those lines. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, we see it in our own place now at the moment. Like some of the fellas that are ready to go now are just ready to go. Whereas, as you can see, I'm upskilling now, so I need to kind of my next thing is just to box off other things,
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can have, younger people can come in as well, and sometimes they can think, well, I've no experience, or I've no real experience yet, I've nothing to offer. So I think no matter sometimes where you are on the age spectrum, we always have a concern, either I won't learn anything new, or it's not going to benefit me, versus I haven't a clue what I'm doing here. So I think there's always an element of that across that spectrum. The other piece that we need to consider here for your training considerations is your learning style. Now, you're all aware of the various different learning styles at this stage. You know them inside out and upside down, I hope. So things like your activist, your pragmatist, your reflector, your theorist, your the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic. So you've all of those various different learning styles of your trainees, and we need to keep those in our minds as well when we are designing our training, to see how can I bring in different activities that will share it across all the different learning styles. So I'm not just always doing role plays, or I'm not just always getting them to read stuff, that you're catering for every kind of different learning style as well. And then finally, the last one, again, which we touched on when we were speaking there about the equality side of things, is learning difficulties. We need to consider what we may do. So this is all, remember, we don't know who our group is yet, or we haven't even started training. What would we do if we had somebody with a learning difficulty? So you're kind of putting your contingency plan or your plan B in place in relation to that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So So your background, emotional disposition, and previous experience, I've spoken through all of these, but we'll go through them quickly again. So your literacy and education levels of your trainee, low levels of confidence, and as well, remember, people may have associated training with negative experiences in the past. Mary, you said there that someone might not have ever been in a training environment before, and they maybe would have had potentially a bad experience in school. So anything that they think is associated with learning has a negative connotation on it. So these are the various different things, again, that we just have to be mindful of, that not a lot of people are going to come through the door really excited about being in a training environment. They might come in with some trepidation and some concern. So your younger trainees may be overconfident and want to move ahead too quickly. They might think, oh my God, we're taking forever on this. Will they ever hurry up? Or they could equally be nervous or uncertain, and they can expect that training will be similar in approach to school or college. So that it's not kind of dealing with adults, you're still being very much directed, whereas from a training perspective, as we know, that's not always the case. Your trainers then must plan to address these issues, and they may consider things like testing the learning at regular intervals. So if your younger trainees kind of want to move ahead too quickly, they may not be at the place to move ahead yet. They may think they are, but they may not be there yet. So it's to test that learning at regular intervals. Offer encouragement where you can, and outline at the outset that different methods will be adopted, so that you're going to be using different training methods, and again, to cater for all the different learning styles. Now, I do want to say that these are all only generalizations. So in relation to your older trainer, your older trainees, younger trainees, they're only generalizations. They're not saying that this is accurate for everybody, but it can be the case in some instances. Your learning styles then is you would have your activists. So as we know, activists love problem solving, games, role playing, and hands-on on practical experiences. Your reflectors like observing, reviews, and structured activities. Your pragmatists like practical application, models that can be emulated, action plans and learning activities that involve real life situations. And then finally, your theorists, they like models, concepts, theories, like intellectually focused challenges, listening to or reading about interesting concepts, and structured activities with a clear purpose. So it's to try, when you're planning your training sessions, it's to try as much as possible to say, what am I doing for my activists? What am I doing for my reflectors? What am I doing for my pragmatists? And what am I doing for my theorists? To make sure that all the various different learning styles are catered for. Moving on then to our learning difficulties. So when planning and organizing training activities, you must consider the possibility that you could have people with hearing issues, sight impediments. You could have a wheelchair-bound trainee. You could have things like maybe dyslexia and related conditions. So that, again, we need to know, or we need to have our plan in place as to what we're going to do if we are presented with each of these. It's critical that your trainer consults with the trainee at different learning intervals to ensure that facilities, learning aids, and learning approaches are appropriate to the needs as well. So you have to link in with your trainees. You have to see, is the material okay? Am I going too slow? Am I going too fast? You need more information. Is there any supplementary information I can be providing you with?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Vicky.
Yeah.
I was thinking there as well, do you know, if there was people with wheelchairs, they might need specific access to rooms and things like that. You know, they might need wheelchair bound rooms, and they might have different requirements than able-bodied people might need.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and again, typically people will tell you this in advance. So if somebody is in a wheelchair, chances are they do let you know this in advance, that they need an accessible room. But at the same time, or you need to have a plan B in place to say, okay, I'm normally upstairs, but if I need to be in a different room, do I have that facility available to me? Let's take the training center, for example. If we had somebody with a wheelchair, our room where we were probably wouldn't be ideal, in the sense of, the doorways will be quite narrow getting into the room. However, within the building, there are other accessible rooms. So it might have been just a case that we would have to change rooms. But absolutely, Declan, they are the factors that you have to consider. And, you know, things like wheelchair accessible toilets, everything like that is a factor as well. I have to apologise about this slide. This slide should go after the younger trainees, so it should be like 3 slides ago, but for some reason it's popped and I just haven't got around to changing it back yet. So I just go through this. So sometimes older trainees may feel that it's not worth their while learning something new. They might resent being trained by someone younger than themselves. They might be reluctant to change. It might also be a situation where they're willing to learn, but they're lacking in confidence, or they might be very experienced and only require refresher training, yet they're being made to sit through God knows how long of the training as well. So again, you have to plan to address these issues, and you might consider things like explaining clearly at the outset why your training is necessary, acknowledging trainees' previous experience, give details of your own levels of experience as well, offer encouragement, and place a practice before theory as well. So it's to utilize the experience within the room as well, and to back that experience into the theoretical application also. So from the perspective of choosing and preparing learning aids, okay, so as I know I would have said to you in one of our last classes that we need to be very clear on the difference between our learning methods, our training methods, and our learning or our training aids. So our training method would be a lecture or a presentation, and your learning aid then would be your PowerPoint or your flip chart or whatever type of learning aid that you're using. So effective use of learning aids can make training more interesting. It can give a focal point. It can help to improve retention. A lot of the time it's effective. People can take the notes away with them. So when you're deciding on the learning aids that you want to use, you need to think of the following. So first off, are the planned learning aids available to you? So do you actually have access to the learning aids that you need? Are they most suitable for the purpose as well? So you might want to use PowerPoint, but it mightn't be applicable. You might want to use a flip chart, but if you have a room full of 50 people, nobody is going to see what's on the flip chart. So you need to think, are they fit for purpose? The other side of things to consider as well is, will they mean that extra preparation time is required? So obviously, if you're utilizing different learning aids, the time has to go into developing those as well. You need to consider, are the materials up to date? And if they're not up to date, you'll have to update them. And also, are they easily understandable? So are they, again, fit for purpose, and can they be understood by the trainees? And with regards to this, proper planning and preparation is required with regards to choosing and preparing your learning aids. So we quickly go through the no prizes for guessing. If we were sitting inside the class, you'd be working on these in groups at the moment. But obviously we don't have the facility to do that. But in relation to, let's say, your LCD projector or your PowerPoint, the advantages are that it adds color, vibrancy, and movement to the display. So you have your PowerPoint, you can add in, images, graphs, everything like that, and it makes it possible to change images at the press of a button. It can project a professional image. It's easy to change or add slides, so you can add stuff in or take stuff out, and you don't have to redesign the entire thing. And the application is very portable. You might only need it on a memory key. You might have it, in the cloud or something like that you can just access it. So you don't have to be lugging a lot around with you. If you do have to bring it with you, it might only necessarily mean bringing a laptop. So it's not, it is very portable and very movable. The disadvantages of this is that it may detract from the message. Okay, so it may take the focus away from what the trainer is trying to go through. It may be relied on too heavily or poorly used. And as we know, there can be potential technical glitches. You've gone through absolutely the full spectrum of technical glitches. We had the instances where the projector wasn't working, so we had to go to another room. So technical glitches can have an impact with these as well. Your flip chart, then, your advantages of your flip chart is that it helps to provide a common focus. It's an interactive method of presenting key points so you can have everyone feeding into it. It kind of aids group discussion as well. So it's an interactive method of gathering points from trainees, and the information can be retained off the flip chart as well. If you're always going to be within the one training environment, you can maybe pin them up on the wall, or if you're coming back to that group, maybe within a month, you can take the flip chart away or the pages away, and you can bring them back with you as well at that point. So the information can still be retained and used. Not as easy to change it, might get a little bit tatty. If you lose it, you're in trouble. But the information can be retained off it as well. Disadvantages of your flip chart is that it does require practice to write quickly and legibly. You have to write big on a flip chart, because otherwise it won't be seen, and it does require good spelling. So again, that's something else to bear in mind for this. And unfortunately, we don't have the advantage of spell check on a flip chart. Your interactive whiteboard then, I'm not sure, do any of you have any experience of interactive whiteboards or anything like that?
Just very vague experience of using it,
Okay.
but not for training purposes.
Okay.
They're quite tricky, actually.
They're quite tricky.
They're quite tricky, yeah.
Yeah. And again, there's a whole, like, if you were to ever utilize an interactive whiteboard, chances are you will get training on it in advance, because you need to know how to work it. But they're an interactive method for presenting key points. So what you can do on them is, an awful lot of primary schools, a lot of schools are not primary schools, a lot of schools are using them nowadays, and you can link them to various different web-based resources as well, so that they'd be accessible all from the one large screen. It can be connected to speakers and other devices, and it offers a range of interactive resources. Applications then can be kind of manipulated by the users, and it can also be used as an interactive flip chart, so the work may be saved. So as I was saying in the previous example, if you lose the page, you're in trouble. But in this instance, if you're writing on it and using it, shall we say, as a flip chart, it will save that information for you, so you can refer back to it. Disadvantages of this are cost. They're very, very expensive. They're not something as an individual trainer you can be lugging around yourself. So they'd always be kind of in situ within an organization. Overuse of them may detract from the essential message. Okay, so people might be only more focused on the the way the information is coming in and out, and the fact that it's that little bit different. Fun and excitement elements may supersede critical learning elements. So again, it goes back to detracting from the essential message. And again, there may be technical glitches with it. But as I said to you in relation to that, I don't have any experience of using them from a training perspective myself. So I can't comment one way or the other. I have seen them in use. I have kind of, I would say, messed around with them, but kind of had worked on them once or twice, but they are quite they're quite finicky. There's technical glitches on them, so if you ever were to be utilizing, you would be kind of getting trained on them ever before you would use them. I put up the picture there just as a little bit of an example for you, just in the event that you weren't sure what it was that I was talking about. Moving on then to another learning age, you have your video or your DVD. Advantages of video and DVD is they can help to add interest, okay? So it just takes away from the whole idea of going through the PowerPoint or going through the flip chart, or, so it's just a little bit of a break, and it can add an interest to it. It provides a change of pace, and it's useful to reinforce key points as well. And it can be customized for a very specific focus. Another advantage for your video and DVD that's not up there is you can show things through a video and DVD that it maybe wouldn't be safe to show in real life. So for example, anything around fire safety or anything like that, it mightn't be safe to show that in real life, but you can utilize videos to reiterate that point as well. Disadvantages of this is it's very passive for trainees. I'm sure you'll all remember, back in school, if the video was rolled out, you nearly felt it was a bit of a free class or a free afternoon. So it can be a bit passive for them. What I would always suggest with regards to videos, if you are utilizing them, tell them So tell your trainee you're going to be asking questions at the end, because that's a way for them to stay engaged with it, rather than just thinking this is a couple of minutes that they can have a bit of a relax. So again, some trainees may lose concentration. The video as well may be too general. If it's not good and if it's not specific to what you're training on, think about, do you really need to use it? If it's too broad and if it's too general, and if you need to keep saying, but that won't matter here and that's not applicable to us, it will lose its impact. You may have embedded cultural differences in it as well, and it may be outdated in ways that detract from the intended message. I'm sure you're all aware of or know Basil Fawlty and Fawlty Towers.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So he would have done an awful lot of training videos previously. They're absolutely astronomically expensive. But an awful lot of people and trainers, after they had spent the money on them, would have kept using them over and over and over again. And I think if they were to be utilized in a training situation now, all people would do is they would think it was a bit of a laugh, you know. So they can, again, it's detracting from the intended message. So to make sure, if you are using a video or if you are using a DVD, that it's being used for a specific purpose and that it really is going to reiterate the message that you're trying to get across. I would also say there, sorry, just before I move on to the next slide, with regards to videos as well, careful of the time and of how long they are. If you're using a long video clip, it up into smaller chunks. You know, go through one, maybe then go through a part of it, maybe have a discussion around it, go back to the next part, rather than showing maybe a video clip that's 20 minutes long and they've lost their attention span is lost. Break it into bite-sized chunks and have that discussion, and it will be more valuable as a learning aid at that point if you were to do that. Workbooks then and handouts. So the advantages here is that it does provide a point of reference for your trainees following the training. They can take something away with them. They can refer back to it if they can't remember what was said. And your trainees can add personal notes to it as well. So they can make their own little notes on the material. The disadvantages here is care must be taken that all information is accurate and up to date. And again, it may prove time consuming to compile. And there's also the other side of it, that trainees may read ahead. So they may be gone away a couple of pages ahead of you. So again, you need to consider, am I going to give them the handout or the workbook at the beginning, at the middle, or when I get to this point, or am I going to wait till the end? There's two kind of schools of thought about that, in the sense that if you wait till the end, they have nothing to write on. They can't make notes on the slides or on the piece as you're going through it. So again, the value would potentially be lost. If there's anything that you're concerned about them reading ahead, break them into maybe sections. We also have to trust our trainees as well and realize that, you know, hopefully they're not going to read ahead, and that they will stay engaged with us. And if there's anything that you don't want them to see, keep those notes supplementary and then maybe give those ones to them at the end. But I would always be of the view, but again, this is only my own personal opinion and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but I would always be in the view of give them the handouts so that they can take the notes. They can take the notes themselves, because I think by waiting to the end of it, you've lost the impact of the handout. So preparing your visual aids then have to be focused on assisting your trainees learning. They're not meant to provide a support system for a badly prepared trainer. So unfortunately, they're not for you as a trainer, they're there for your trainees. So your trainer should always remember the following when you're preparing your visual aids: clear, simple, and professional. And sometimes the simpler, the better. You know, for any of those ones, your projector, your PowerPoint, your flip chart, your interactive board, your video, DVD, workbook, and other learning aids. You also have things, as we said, the other learning aids there down the end is about objects. So if you've any props or if you've anything like that that you need to bring into the class, they are your visual aids as well. You might not be using them as part of your training, but they could provide context to what it is that you're talking about. So it may be no harm to bring it in. Dependent as well on the training that you're delivering, you may consider kind of digital recording and playback. And again, I would say approach with caution with regards to the playback. I know says she's gonna have to record you doing a presentation that's in the not too distant future. But it's the playback piece is what I would tread carefully with for the group, because it has to be a learning there has to be a learning element of it. It's not just an opportunity for a class to to pick holes in people either. And again, the majority of time classmates will be very, very supportive of each other, but you could get the situation where somebody uses it as an opportunity to have a little bit of a go at somebody as well. So again, just around the playback, tread carefully with it. So for your projector, your PowerPoint, make sure the text is big enough. Okay? You can make all the text bold if you wanted to stand out, and don't overcrowd the slides. So you can use an image of a document. So for example, if you want to say refer to this policy or this standard operating procedure, you can certainly put a picture of that up on the PowerPoint. However, I would advise you to give the full document then as the handout to the trainees, so they're not trying to read something off a picture that's up on the PowerPoint. Maximum bullet points on your slides. The maximum recommended is 8, and 5 or 6 is considered optimum. Okay, so 5 or 6 bullet points is kind of where they're saying that's the sweet spot. That's where the text is big enough, everyone can read it, and it doesn't look like a full paragraph up on top of the slide. Choose a plain background for your slides and a mild color, and be careful of the color of the font. I think I said this to you, I'm speaking from my own personal experience in relation to that. Make sure there's a good contrast between the background and the font, that they're not kind of similar tones, because when something is up on a projector, it might not necessarily read as well as it does on a smaller screen. So again, just always be careful of that, and make sure that there's a contrast between them. With your PowerPoint projector as well, be mindful of animations, okay? So, sometimes you can get the bullet points to fly in from the side, and you can get them to do all of that. They can be great, but again, they can detract from the message as well. Sometimes utilize them if you want to highlight a specific point, but if you're utilizing them for every single point, the trainees then only focus on the animations rather than the information that's contained in it. The timed introduction of the text, I personally wouldn't recommend it. Now, any of you, if you're not sure what the timed introduction of the text means, is it's where I could rehearse my presentation and I would time it, and every time I hit the enter key, it is then saved into the slide deck. So it's basically knowing that after a minute and 2 seconds, I move on to the next slide, and then I'm only 30 minutes on the other one. My issue with the timed introduction of the text is if something happens and if you get delayed or if you get through the material too quickly, it's going to throw you off. So I personally wouldn't recommend it from that. I had a student do it before for a presentation, and he went through his rehearsal really, really quickly, and his slides then as he was presenting them were flying up on the screen, and he had he didn't know what was happening. He was putting himself under an awful lot of pressure. So I would just say, less is more in these kind of situations. Use arrows or circles on PowerPoint to indicate areas on images if required. So don't point with your finger. You can get one of the little stickers that I have as well. Or you can just circle something. You can utilize PowerPoint, and there's a facility on it that you can just circle something. Use pictures and diagrams rather than clip art. I don't think anybody really utilizes clip art anymore, but where possible, use pictures and diagrams. Avoid overuse and death by PowerPoint, and have your plan B in the event of a technological failure. So if your projector doesn't work and if you can't move rooms, what are you going to do? So how would you get out of that situation? Your flip chart is best used during interactions with your trainees. So have your pre-prepared flip chart, and it provides a break from PowerPoint. 4 colors only on your flip chart, I would always advise: black, blue, green, and red. Never use red to write on your flip chart. Always use black and blue to write, green then for bullet points or for underlining, and the same with red, because the green and the red, they can be quite difficult for people to see. Again, if people have You know, a sight impediment, green and red, can be particularly difficult to read, so stick with your predominantly your black and blue. Write big and bold on the flip chart, and the general recommendation is 6 by 6. 6 words per line and 6 lines per page. If you want to, you can on your flip chart write with a light pencil, and then when you're delivering the training session, the material is already there. So let's say, for example, if someone was worried about spelling, or they were worried about the size of their writing, they could have it traced out already on the flip chart, and then they're just going over it in the marker. So for all intents and purposes, to the class, it looks like you're writing on the flip chart, but you have it done already with a light pencil. Sometimes, I know what I struggled with a lot, will do sometimes with flip charts, is trying to maintain a straight line of writing. So if I'm writing, it can tend to curve off down at one side, or it goes off at an awful angle. You can have lines. So if you wanted to draw lines with a pencil as well on your flip chart, you can do that also. Your interactive whiteboard, so you should be fully conversant with all facilities and resources available through an interactive whiteboard before using it in a training event, and the use of it should be carefully planned. Check any websites as well. If you're using an interactive whiteboard and you're accessing any website, check in advance that they can be accessed live during a training event, just in case that a website was blocked or for whatever reason. I remember previously, when I would have been delivering kind of the CV preparation and interview techniques with I suppose FOSS, as it was at the time, or the ETV, they had LinkedIn was blocked, yet Facebook wasn't, which I thought was absolutely crazy at the time, because I was working with people and they were wanting to set up LinkedIn profiles, yet that website was blocked. However, people could get on to YouTube, and YouTube was blocked as well, which I understood part of it being blocked for people not watching videos that weren't related to it. But anything, relevant, we couldn't access any relevant content. So always just check the website that there's not any firewalls or anything there, it's not blocked. And plan to ensure again that all your learning styles are catered for. For your video and your DVD, plan the timing of a video or DVD viewing quite carefully. I would say after lunch, probably not a great time if it's an extended clip. Maybe before lunch isn't great either. So make sure that you're picking your moments for your videos appropriately, and plan to avoid viewing of more than 10 minutes consecutively, and show it in sections if necessary. So if your video was 15 minutes, you could maybe look at 2 7.5-minute videos or 3 5-minute videos, and it would balance it a little bit better than a 15-minute session where people could become disengaged. For your workbooks, handout material, decide whether to give the handout material before, during, or after a training session. And as I've gone through with you, arguments can be made for either case with regards to these. Make sure all photocopied material is clearly legible, and check all handout material, is up to date. It's sequenced correctly, it's concise, it's grammatically correct, and it's referenced where relevant. Okay? And then coming on to your other learning aids, so as we said, objects and digital recording and playback. So when and how is part of the planning and preparation, so when to show the objects. There's a keen awareness here of health and safety issues, and that should be kept in mind when planning. If something is quite heavy, you might want people to pick it up. So you have to be careful of any health and safety issues that the objects could pose. Digital recording and playback then, the greatest advantage for trainees is to see themselves performing a specific task. So let's say, for example, from a manual handling perspective, if you were getting them to lift the box and they were doing it incorrectly, you could record them and show back to them exactly what they're doing wrong, and that they're able to self-assess their own performance. There should always be constructive feedback from your trainer, and fellow learners can assist the learning process as well. But again, as I said, tread carefully with regards to the digital recording and feedback. Moving on then from our aids and our learning aids, it's talking about choosing and preparing a training location. Now, sometimes you don't get the opportunity to choose or prepare a training location. You might be given a room, you might be given a location. And if that's the case, you just have to make the best of what you're given. But there are a number of considerations when choosing and planning the use of a location for training. So your room size. What size of a room do you want? What size of a room do you need? If you're in a big, huge room and there's only a couple of you in there, you're going to be rattling around. Equally, if there's a large amount of students and you have a small room, it's going to be quite uncomfortable. So there has to be a balance. You need then to think about what seating layout you have. And obviously, as you know, within the room that we were in for the course, we couldn't really change around the seating purely because of the fact of the desks were fixed. We didn't have the opportunity to do that. But if you do, you need to consider, and these are the following kind of seating styles, would be chevrons. So this is where they're kind of like, you all know the chevrons, you see them in the roads and the tunnels and all of that. And so they're kind of a bit like a V shape. So you can look at that kind of a shape for a training location. You can look at fan type seating, so where the seats are kind of fanned out. You can have a U-shaped seating. As a trainer, that gives you the ability to kind of walk up and down with your, to your trainees as well. Or if they're working on anything, it gives you the opportunity to be able to stop at every kind of desk. You can have conference style seating as well. And then sometimes you may need to consider having a breakout area. So if you have a lot of people, inside in a room together, and if there are any activities, you mightn't be able to have them all doing it within the one room. So you might need a breakout area. It might only be a small room. It might be something like that. But just consider, do you actually need one? And then when you are also thinking about your training location, you need to consider as well power sources. So do you need power sources, be it for a laptop, a projector, whatever you need? I went through a phase there, when I was doing the training for FOSS and going around to the various different locations, I would have always had 2 extension leads in the boot of my car because I had no idea what the power supply was going to be like in the training locations that we'd have been sent into. So sometimes if you're not sure, it might be no harm, but an awful lot of places now, they are fully equipped with your power sources, because when you think of the extension leads, there are health and safety issues in relation to trailing wires and things like that as well. So these are just all the things you have to keep in mind. Now, we move on then to the whole kind of area concept of rehearsing. So this is unfortunately often the most neglected area within the preparation phase. However, it's one of the most important ones to the success of your training. So it can prove invaluable for gauging the time that a training session will cover. You might look at your slides and say, oh, that's grand, that'll take me an hour. And in actual fact, it might only take you 30 minutes. And you then have to find more material for 30 minutes, or you're trying to have conversations, or you're trying to do stuff like that, and you feel a little bit under pressure. And it also gives you the opportunity to edit the content of the material as well as you're going through it. It gives you the chance as well to become familiar with the material and its sequencing, and it can add confidence and smoothness to the delivery. So when we talk about rehearsal, we mean literally talking about and going through your training session as if you are actually delivering it, rather than just flicking down through the slides or the notes and saying, oh yeah, all that's fine. You actually verbalize and you talk through the entire training session. So it's not to be confused with reviewing the material. Proper rehearsal means going through the planned delivery and saying all the words out loud. And ideally, it should be carried out in the actual location using the planned learning aids and materials. But look, sometimes that's not always possible. You might not have access to the room until the training, but certainly you should be carrying out your rehearsal of the content in its entirety. So, in summary, for this one, so this is your preparing for training delivery. A well-prepared trainer will soon gain the confidence and respect of the trainees as well. So if you're coming into your training session and your trainees know that you're well prepared, you have thought of everything, you have everything that you need for the session, you will gain their confidence and respect. And also, even from your own personal side of things, if you have all of this done, you won't feel on the back foot. Like, if anything, if you're planning for anything that can go wrong, will go wrong, and you have your plan B in place, you know that you can deal with all of these, and then your own confidence won't be affected by that either. So just to quickly recap what we've gone through on this one, is that you should now be able to devise appropriate strategies to address a range of issues pertinent to trainees. You can choose and develop relevant learning aids and materials for specific training events. You can plan and organise an appropriate location for a training event, or the various different choices that you have for it. And you can also identify the benefits of rehearsing your training delivery as well. So based on that one, on your preparing for training delivery, does anyone have any questions or anything for me on that one?
No.
Have you all got to sleep on me or anything yet?
That covers.
I have a
That covers-
joke.
Vicky, that
Go
covers
on, I
part
suppose
2
we
of the
all
training
need a
of
bit
the
of light
project, is the training
entertainment.
materials and training aids.
Sorry,
I was
Jackie,
just going to say,
No, you're fine. Carry on.
I was just going to say, hopefully there'd be no outbreak rooms around at the moment, but
Oh
that
God,
was my
let's
joke.
hope not.
That was my joke.
Jackie, what was your question?
My question, that covers kind of part 2 of the project, isn't it? Training materials and training aids and compliance with equality legislation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Now, how are your heads going? Do you want to go through the next one? Or, because I'm conscious of the fact that we've gone through 2, and I do recognize the fact that when we are going through this, it is a little bit more challenging because you're more focused. Now, I know I scheduled till 8:30 to go through it. The next lot of slides, there's only 22 slides. So if you're willing to go for it, I'm more than happy to go for it as well, but I'll very much be guided by yourself.
Right. Well, it's nearly bedtime here, so I'm going to have to get the boys. I'm going to have to slip away, if that's okay.
No, of course, no issues at all. And look, guys, if you want to leave it, till the next one, I have no problem whatsoever with that. But it's here equally, if you want to press ahead, whatever you want to do, I'm good with.
No, if this is recorded, Chuck, can I get the recording if you do go ahead?
I will put it up on YouTube once I get everyone's permission. I won't have a problem with that.
Thanks, Vicky.
Okay. What about the rest of you? How are you finding it? Is it hard going, or?
No, it's fairly straightforward, like, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
it's
suppose that's
straightforward.
the thing is, the content, it's an awful lot of this, and this is why I was saying to you that if it was to happen to us at any point in the material, we're quite lucky, in the sense that it's not really heavy kind of theoretical stuff. It is just a lot of, pointers and reiterating common sense, and just there's a couple of bits in there that we need to be mindful of, but overall it's not that heavy going. So there's 22 slides in the next one. Do you want to continue on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue, yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm
Okay.
glad to carry on, yeah.
Perfect. As I said, there's only 22 slides, so we'll get through. And then if you have any questions around the project, I can pull up the PowerPoint on the project as well, and I can talk you through that a little bit quickly as well at the end, just in case any of you are so inclined that you want to get working on it over the next couple of days or anything like that. You can be sitting out in the garden in the sun doing it.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
So can you see the screen that I have up at the moment? Or I think I have to go to new share, I think. Okay. So can you all see that one? Delivering training?
Yeah.
With the purple on it, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so objectives for this is that on completion of this module, you will be able to identify the key issues related to the beginning of a training event. The beginning of a training event is so important because that's the opportunity that you catch them and that you reel them in. So it's important, really shouldn't be overlooked. You need to be able to adopt appropriate steps and principles in maintaining a positive learning culture during training delivery. You want to be able to identify specific things to do and to avoid when providing feedback to your trainees. So if you are in a situation where you need to give feedback to your trainees, things you should be doing, things you shouldn't be doing, Adopt an effective approach to instruction and demonstration. So again, this is if you are doing any practical training, that you have to do a demonstration and people have to follow what it is that you're doing. This outlines the approach that you should be taking in relation to that. And then finally, a use of learning, using a range of learning aids in an effective manner. So now we've moved on from talking about preparing for the training delivery to actually delivering the session. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this, and you have seen it so many times. Yeah.
Could I just ask a question? Objectives and learning outcomes, right? I'm just confused about both. They're very similar. Like the objectives you use at the start, do you use the learning outcomes at the end, or do you use both?
You can use both, but that's kind of best practice, Jackie, would be that you have the objectives at the start, and that's kind of your roadmap, and then the outcomes are at the end as to what you should be able to do at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you should be very familiar with this systematic approach at the moment. So as we know now, we have identified the learning needs, designed the training, and we're at stage 3 now at the moment around delivering the training. We'll come on to evaluate the training. I think I have another session scheduled with you for next Wednesday. So we'll come on to the evaluation piece at that point. So from the beginning of a training session, when you're going in and when you're delivering a training session, you need to think to yourself, what am I going to do? One of the first things that I would advise to you would be to arrive early. Okay, always get in there, try and get in there before the trainees. Sometimes you have trainees that are always that little bit earlier than you, but do try and arrive early, because it does lessen the spotlight effect on you coming in the door as the trainer. I always think it's very important, particularly at the beginning, the first time you're meeting a group. Like if you're with them for a continuous period of time, you don't always have to be there that much earlier than them, but always be early, because it does gives you the opportunity to introduce yourself to them, and you're then calmer and you're not as panicked, because if you're coming in the door at 5 minutes to go and you have to get set up, look, you could be facing IT problems, and again, then you feel on the back foot. So always just be that little bit early. The opening 15 minutes are a particularly crucial time within your training delivery. So this is where you get your trainees' attention and their enthusiasm for the content. This is where you're going to win it. So trainees may be thinking things along the lines of, what am I doing here? Why am I bothering with this training? When are we actually going to start learning something useful? I already know this. Or things like, will I be able to keep up with the rest of the group? So I suppose the beginning of a training event is to try and alleviate as many of those concerns as you possibly can. Now you might know they're thinking that, but it's to keep in your mind as to going through all of these various different things that you could actually utilize it as part of your introduction as well. They'll also be thinking things like, what's the trainer like? What will they think of me? Will I like them? Does the trainer know what they're doing? Can the trainer really help me achieve my objectives? Is it safe to speak openly here about any work problems or any issues? Equally, you as a trainer might be thinking, do I want them to be telling me about all their work problems? And chances are you don't. And also you can have trainees thinking about what's happening in work right now. It's very hard sometimes to move your mindset away from what's going on, am I needed, is there anything, is the place falling down without me, or anything like this. So again, these are all things that are going through your trainees' minds as well. So at the beginning, you need to create a positive learning culture. The trainer should start promptly, briefly outline your own experience, and explain the background to the training event. It's critically important that the trainer adapts and maintains a confident, upbeat demeanor, because your trainees will feed off that also. Sometimes it's not always possible. Sometimes you might be, you might be a little bit worse for wear. You may be, in the sense of, you might be tired. You might just be below par. But as much as possible, it's to kind of dust yourself down and give your all to your trainees, because your trainees take the lead from the trainer, and the following statements should be avoided at all costs. When I hear trainers saying this, it just drives me mad, and it also makes me not worry about them, but chances are I would have never picked this up if they hadn't said it. Was, I'm really nervous up here, so I'm sure you'll be patient with me. Never let your trainees know that you're nervous. people are always conscious of the fact it's going to come across in my voice. They're going to see that I'm nervous. It doesn't. Believe me, I've seen so many people, and I say to them, you know, even during presentations over the last number of years, and I say to them, God, that was really, really good. You did really well. And they would say to me that they were absolutely terrified. You pick up on your own nerves much more than anybody else will. So don't leave somebody know how nervous you are. Sometimes people think, oh, they'll give me a break if they know I'm nervous. But your trainees might be thinking, if they're so nervous, what are they doing here? Why are they giving us the training? The other part, again, is that I would say stay away from is, parts of this training can be quite boring, but it's something we have to go through as part of our compliance standards. You have straight away lost any bit of interest levels from your trainees because you had told them that it's boring. It mightn't be boring at all. You might find it boring. They might be very excited about it. So never let them know that a content or a topic is boring. You can say things like it's detailed, or there's a lot of information in it, but I wouldn't say that it's boring. You also want to set the appropriate learning environment. So things about rules, breaks, housekeeping, how training will be conducted, etc. So go through with them if you've any rules about things like them being on their phones, break times, housekeeping from perspectives like fire exits, anything like that, and how the training will be conducted. So for example, will it be PowerPoint? Will it be a mixture? Will there be any PowerPoint at all? Will there be discussion? Are they expected to really be involved? So you're setting out your stall at the beginning of the training environment. You then have Dagny's model. So he outlines that there's kind of he has 9 stages in the model, and then it's adapting this model with regards to training delivery. And the first thing is, as much as possible, try to get your hook into the learner at the beginning. Sometimes this can be done through using things like a story, a statistic, a statement, a picture, anything like that. That's just a little bit different that grabs their attention. You want to then inform the learners of the objectives of the training. You want them to be able to simulate recall of prior learning. So any learning that they have done previously that might assist them for this. Presenting the stimulus, so you're actually presenting them the material that it is you're going to go through. Providing them with learning guidance. Eliciting performance out of them then. So this is maybe where they have to do the task or they have to do something associated with it. You provide them with feedback, then you assess their performance, and then you can see what needs to be done in order to enhance their retention and allow them to transfer it back to the workplace. So that can be done maybe through a summary or something along those lines. So as your training event progresses, trainers should also adopt the following principles. Embrace the unexpected. So more often than not, all your training events will run almost exactly to plan, but inevitably, like anything else, some won't. Back in January, we never thought that we'd be finishing up the module via e-learning and utilizing all that. But you need to be able to adapt, and you need to be able to embrace the unexpected. What can we do in order so that it doesn't affect the delivery of the training? So a flexible approach must be assumed when the unexpected becomes a reality. You need to deliver the training message in a lively manner, maintain enthusiasm, and look for opportunities to inject occasional, and one of the key words in this sentence is appropriate, so occasional appropriate humor. Stay away from any jokes or anything like that you think might fall a little bit, that might just not be PC or mightn't be appropriate, because again, you never know who is in the room. You never know, personal stories of people. Also, they're not appropriate, so just be careful with appropriate humor as well. Look for opportunities to link learning to practical situations. Show patience and understanding, and most of all, respect to your trainees. Check with them that they can see the, whatever training material it is that you're going through with them, or your learning aids, be it your PowerPoint, your flip chart, any objects, anything like that. Check that they can hear you, that you're speaking loud enough, and clarify if and clarity if effective, and the pace of delivery is appropriate, so that you're not going too fast, you're not going too slow, so you're just checking the pace with them. Check their understanding on an ongoing basis, so give them the opportunity to ask any questions. Now again, a little bit like the workbooks and the handouts, sometimes people say, can you hold any questions till the end, because we might actually go through the material. That is totally up to the individual trainer, whether you want to deal with questions throughout or whether you want people to ask questions at the end. Personally, myself, I have no issues with people asking questions throughout the session, because when you get to the end, your trainees may have forgotten the question that they wanted to ask. But again, it mightn't be appropriate for a training session that you're delivering. So, but always outline to them at the beginning whether you'll accept questions as you're going through, or are you going to leave the questions go till the end. And watch for warning signs as well. You'll see your trainees might be getting a little bit sleepy. They might be looking at their watch. They might be, yawning. And if you identify those signs, what can you do in order to kind of lift the mood in the room again? Maybe it's a quick break. Maybe it's moving on from the content that you're covering. Maybe it's a bit of a group exercise. So what can you do to change the dynamic, within the room that way? And seek verbal feedback from the trainees as well, to see how they're getting on, see do they need any more information or anything like that. Effective listening. So as a trainer, your listening skills are really, really important. Because also by listening, we need to be able to give effective feedback as well. And things to avoid for listening is lining up our reply. So we should be listening to hear rather than listening to respond. So rather than thinking, this is what I'll say now in my response, just listen to exactly what is being said. Sometimes you can knock speakers out of their stride as well by maybe interrupting them, or so just leave someone go through with the question. There may also be an instance of personality bias. This person is quite long-winded, or they send me off down the garden path the last time. But we need to be able to parse that, and we need to be able to leave it to one side. Again, with trainers, it's not always about linking comments to your own experiences. If a student or if a trainee is going through their experience, leave it to that. Leave it as their experience. You might want to jump in and say, when this happened to me, that happened to me previously, and go off on your own. Try as much as possible to hold that at that point, but still utilize the example, because we do need to utilize our examples. We do need to utilize our experience, but try not to do it all the time as a direct response to the trainees, if that makes sense. We're not always right as trainers. We can be right hopefully the majority of the time, but we're not always right. So we don't need to feel like that. Don't leave emotional words affect your attention either. If trainees say any kind of emotional words, just leave them go, shall we say, maybe in one ear and out the other. So don't take them personally, or don't leave them affect your attention. If there's anything you're concerned about, obviously you can deal with it afterwards, but don't leave it throw you off your stride. Avoid having a closed mind as well, and avoid patronizing the speaker. Things to do. So what we should be doing is adopting a positive attitude, displaying appropriate body language, reading the signs of the person that's speaking as well, and choosing a response carefully. Okay. So your training strategies then. So this refers to learning or instructional approaches to be followed by the trainer to ensure that the learning process is effective and that your objectives are being met. Okay, so when we're doing our objectives, obviously we need to make sure that the content is going to meet the objective and that the trainees will be able to achieve these at the end. So in general, you need to be able to provide frequent feedback opportunities for learners to self-assess and to self-correct. You need to provide verbal examples that relate to the trainee's experience and mindset, and also use physical examples, so helping the trainees to visualize what is being said in words, where it's not possible maybe to carry out the practical demonstration. Use appropriate questions to promote interaction, and use rhetorical questions to allow trainees to reflect and or theorize on the implications of various situations. realizing that lower levels of behavior, so knowledge, may be taught using more passive learning methods. So if you have people that are coming in with absolutely no knowledge of the topic that you're going to cover, and they've no idea what it is, they've no experience of it, an awful lot of this is going to be done by them using passive learning. So you're going to be taking the lead in an awful lot of it. And that higher levels of behavior require some sort of action or involvement by skills or attitude by the learner. So if the learner is coming in and they're only doing a refresher, or they have done this before, they're very, very experienced, you might be looking to them to utilize examples, so they're going to be more actively involved with the training session. Another factor, another strategy that we need to consider is learner experience and readiness. So inexperienced learners, they prefer an approach where a logical sequence and flow is followed and the pace of learning is steady and progressive. So that there's a structure, you do step 1, then you move on to step 2 and step 3 and so on. Experienced learners, however, may prefer an approach where they can engage in a process of trial and error or discovery. So they know the majority of the steps, so they want to just kind of give it a go. The pace here may be varied in accordance with the readiness of the trainee. So if you know that all your trainees are coming in and they have experience, you mightn't necessarily need to spend too much time on steps 1 and 2. Or you might need to spend time on step 2 with some trainees, but some of them are ready to go to step 3. So again, it's to be able to balance that in line with the requirements of your trainees. So from the perspective then of presenting information, the focus of an entire training session may be on presenting information in order to increase your trainees' knowledge. For example, things like induction training or socialization training in general. On other occasions, information will be presented about particular aspects of a job or task at the beginning of a training session, so maybe as a prelude to a demonstration. So here you're going through maybe limited information, but why this information is important, it might set context to the demonstration that it is that you're going to do. So this information may be concerned with practices and procedures, health and safety matters, operational methods, and it can be compared to giving a short presentation. As this is a training situation, particular attention then should be given to the following: encouraging the active participation of trainees, throw out questions. Ask them, what do you think of this? What would you do in this kind of a situation? And link it to the trainees' knowledge and experiences, and maybe look at building short exercises that they could do as part of this. You want to look at testing your trainees' understanding of the information being given as well. So maybe just asking a couple of questions and seeing what answers you're getting back. You can look then as well at delivering chunks of content and summarizing these on a regular basis, highlighting your key learning points, and providing opportunities again for your trainees to ask your questions. So moving on then, and I know a lot of you may be in the situation where that you have to do job demonstrations or job instruction. So this is where we're looking at, it's really about the skills side of things for training. And your job demonstration and your job instruction is concerned with showing the trainees how a particular job or task is undertaken. So it involves showing and telling. So you must embrace opportunities for trainees to be proactive and to receive feedback on their progress. Important points to remember in this process include ensuring that an appropriate location is used. So this goes back to our preparing for training delivery, and that required resources are available, again with special regard to health and safety issues. If necessary, you're going to break the job or the tasks into suitable learning chunks. You might learn one part now and perfect it, and then you might learn another part next week and then perfect the two things together, and so on. And where relevant, following a particular sequence of activities, some tasks may have to be performed before others. So one can lead into the other. So this is important then for anyone thinking about doing a job demonstration or an instruction. The common steps in a job demonstration or a job instruction are: the first is that you would tell. So as a trainer, you will tell and you will give an overview of what the task entails. Secondly, then, you will perform the task for the trainees to see. And you as a trainer then will perform the task 3 times. The first time that you will do it, it will be demonstrated at normal speed. So let's say, for example, if you were demonstrating on how to tie a shoelace, we'll just take a simple example. You would show it at normal speed to show what it should look like. The second time, you would give a slower demonstration while providing the full commentary. So you would then go through it step by step as to exactly what you're doing for each of the steps. And then thirdly, so the third time you demonstrate it, so that you as a trainer, you allow your trainees to call out the instructions while the trainer performs the task accordingly. So in essence, your trainees will see the task being done 3 times. The first time at normal speed, the second time when you're going through it step by step, and the third time when they're going through it step by step. Okay? Following on from that, then you would allow your trainee time to practice performing the task. But at this point, you're not just allowing them to practice, you will very much have an active role and an active involvement in this, in the sense that you'll be looking around, you'll be monitoring how they're doing how they're performing the task, to make sure that they're doing it properly, that they're not taking any shortcuts, that they're not learning any bad habits. And at this point then as well, you provide feedback to them. So you reinforce correct practice and you highlight incorrect practice as appropriate. So you'll be saying, no, look, you need to go back to the step before it. What you did, step 1, 2, and 3 was perfect. I want you to keep practicing step 4. If you did it this way instead of the other way. So again, your feedback is corrective as opposed to constructive criticism. So I suppose the most important part on this slide is about the 3, and I know you probably think she's really going through this, but it is really beneficial to your trainees in the sense that if they have 3 opportunities to see something, by the time they get around to doing it, they're more familiar with it rather than just seeing it once and being expected to do it themselves. So I know you may feel like it's a little bit of overkill by going through something 3 times. It will really pay dividends for your trainees that they will have seen it so many times. Using your learning aids then effectively, so your LCD projector or your PowerPoint, give yourself time to iron out issues and technical glitches. Keep the trainee sight lines clear. So just make sure everybody can see the entire screen and that there's nothing blocking anybody, or there's no restricted view. So another thing that can be quite handy for you when you're delivering training is that if you want to move from a PowerPoint or from your projector as you're going through it to a discussion, sometimes having the PowerPoint still up on the screen can act as a little bit of a distraction. Pressing B, I don't know will it work here now, you might be able to see it, but pressing B blacks out the screen. I'm not sure if you can see that, but yeah, it does. Okay, perfect. So that blacks out the screen. So what that actually does is it takes the focus off the PowerPoint and puts it onto you as a trainer. I know it's not ideal here when you can't see me, but what it does, if that's in a face-to-face perspective, the focus goes from the PowerPoint onto you as a trainer. A W puts a white screen up. Again, it's personal preference whether you prefer the black or the white, but they're just handy little tips because they can be useful in situations like when a trainee asks a question. When an open question is asked by the trainer to provoke a discussion, because sometimes if the PowerPoint is still up behind, you mightn't get into the same level of discussion that you would if that wasn't there. So it can be helpful to just blank it out without losing your place or without turning off the screen. If the trainer is working on the flip chart, again, very handy to turn it off or to black it out. If the trainer is demonstrating a skill, task or procedure for the trainees. So again, going back here, if we're utilizing our job demonstration that we were talking about, and if you have gone through the theory in relation to it, you can black out the screen then at that point and go through the practical demonstration. And it's also very helpful if you're showing any physical samples. Blanking the screen encourages the trainee to focus on the discussion. As a trainer, try and limit pointing at the screen, and I mean physically pointing with your fingers or with your hand. It's fine to use kind of a laser pointer or something like that, but try and limit touching the screen yourself. And remember to use your PowerPoint as an interactive learning aid. It is not the entire focus. It should be, yeah, I know that's easier said than done sometimes, but it shouldn't be the entire focus. It should be there as a support to you as a trainer, to your trainees, but it shouldn't be the training session in its entirety, because, you know, if that's the case, all you're doing is reading from your PowerPoint, and you should be able to add in other examples and elaborate on the points as need be. Tips for your flip chart: bring the stand as close as possible, and so make sure that everyone has a clear view. It's not always ideal to utilize the flip chart when you have a lot of trainees, but keep it as close to your trainees as possible. As we said already, write big and bold. You can remove the pages and hang them around the walls if necessary. Shorten long sentences into shorter phrases, and utilize your students to do that as well. So if you're having discussion and you're putting anything up on the flip chart and someone calls out a long sentence, get your trainees to shorten it. Say, okay, how would we summarize that? And again, you can have pre-prepared as well, but make sure that all the pages are present and are in order, because if you're lugging around the flip chart, you're bringing it here, there, and everywhere, it may get a little bit tatty. So just always double check that everything is there and it's in order. For your video, utilize it effectively. Timing is very important in the video as well. Make sure that where it's slotting in is appropriate. If it's coming up to a break time and you know you have a video coming up, potentially leave them go on their break a little bit earlier if you can. So again, you don't lose the impact of the video. Remember, explain the learning context of a DVD before playing it. It's not just the opportunity for you as a trainer to have a rest, or for the trainees to have a rest. What you want to do is you want to outline why you're utilizing it. Give the trainees a related task and inform them that you'll be asking for feedback on specific learning points afterwards. This kind of reduces the possibility of the trainee opting out if they know they have to watch for something. And then at the end of the video, don't just say, okay, we'll move on. Discuss the video, summarize the main points of it, because that's what you're utilizing it for. You're utilizing it as a learning tool. So if you're not discussing it and you're not summarizing the main points, you're not getting the full benefit out of the video. Digital recording and playback. Again, always check your equipment before the beginning. If it needs to be charged, just make sure that you have done that. Explain that used appropriately, it can offer a significant learning opportunity. Reassure your class as well if you are utilizing this. Sometimes places will utilize it for maybe if they're doing interviews or if they're doing anything like this. I mean, training rather than a real interview situation. So again, they can give feedback and they can show trainees where they would have done something that they could improve upon. Nowadays, we nearly always have to kind of get consent from people to be videoed, and also you need to reassure them that it's not going to be used anywhere else. Like, it's not going to be used for any other purpose than the purpose within the training room at that moment in time. Because I think sometimes there can be a fear in people around a video being used or around it being shared somewhere. You need to build in ample time for recording and playback, because what you need to realize is not only do you have to record it, but you have and carry out the activity and record it, you have to have the same amount of time then to play it back, to watch it, and then equally you need to have the opportunity for a discussion around it as well. So the following sequence is then recommended. Let's say if a video was being done on me, I would be given the opportunity first to self-review it and say what I think I did poorly, what I need to improve upon, and any general comments. So I'm given the first opportunity to comment on myself. Secondly, then you would give peer review. So you give the opportunity for the class members to then comment. And, you know, to say, and it's not only any negatives, people can comment on positives as well. And again, I would encourage people to focus in on some positives, so it's not just seen as a mechanism to pick holes in someone or just to purely identify what they've done poorly. And only at that point, once the person has reviewed it individually and once the class has had an opportunity to review it, only at that point do you as a trainer review it, because you never want it to be a situation where the trainer is just straight away going in and picking holes in the negative. Whereas at least by going through those other steps, someone has got the opportunity to kind of reflect on it themselves, take their colleagues' perspectives on board, and then at the end take the trainer position on board as well. So I think that's vitally important from your digital recording and playback if you ever do have to utilize that within a training session. So in summary, these were our objectives at the beginning, but they can be our learning outcomes now. So at this point, you should be able to identify the key issues related to the beginning of a training event. You should be able to adopt appropriate steps and principles in maintaining a positive learning culture during a training event. You should be able to identify specific things to do and to avoid when providing feedback to your trainees. Adopt an effective approach to instruction and demonstration, and use a range of learning aids in an effective manner. Okay, so does anyone have any questions on anything that we've gone through there?
No,
No?
that's okay.
No. Okay, good stuff. Now, again, do you want me to go through some information with you with regards to the project? I can go through the PowerPoint on the project, or do you want me to leave that to the beginning of the session on Wednesday?
Maybe Wednesday.
Yeah, because I think I'm conscious of the fact you're in front of the computer now nearly 2 hours, and I know like it's hard going to just be listening, and it is like you're very much, and I don't mean it this way, but you're in a passive kind of learning space at the moment because we don't have the opportunity, to do any of our group exercises, or there isn't any involvement. But what I would say to you is have a review of that document of the overview of the project. If you have any questions over the weekend, send me a message. There's no issues whatsoever with regards to that. And then if not, I'll start off the session on Wednesday by going through the project brief, and that if you have any questions, then we can answer them at that point as well.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Guys, thanks a million for your attention, because I know it's hard going for you. And have a lovely Easter weekend and stay safe. And I'll send the link for this on I'll send it to you on Tuesday, so it's fairly close for you to access it on or I'll send it Wednesday morning, and I'll touch base with you all on Wednesday. But likewise, if you need me for anything over the weekend, just send me a message.
Perfect. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Vicky, thanks very much for that. That's great.
Bye.
Have a
Have a
great
great
weekend.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Have a
Well,
great
nice
weekend,
weekend,
lads. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye, lads. Right.